past cooperative, economic and development, cooperative development seminars, workshops, learning experiences. And certainly we're happy to have Michael Peck with us today and his lovely wife Michelle, and certainly great friend Wiley Rhodes at the back. So Michael, I just went back, and June 3rd was when I came to Washington and actually met you in person. So since BEDC, Bermuda Economic Development Corporation, has taken on the whole kind of push the mantle of developing cooperatives, building the cooperative development platform in Bermuda for cooperatives to thrive. It's been just a whole interesting journey, and a part of our strategy, which is laid out in our materials. All of our materials are online, so if you missed certainly the seminars, please go online and see all the great resources. A part of that strategy, just for time's sake, is to be able to kind of search out the very best and quality kind of leading cooperative development practitioners and developing just kind of all around the world. It's a whole new game for Bermuda, certainly for myself. And it wasn't long before I came across Michael Peck in our training, whether it was Madison, Wisconsin and whatnot. And just up to almost a year ago, kind of reached out, went to Michael, and was just amazed at the rich kind of just resource in which he is. So Michael Peck, kind of co-op visionary, thought leader, practitioner, developer. Certainly, Michael, thank you for all that you've given us. As a matter of fact, our first cooperative developer, mover and shaker, Dr. Julian Manley from Preston, UK, was shared through you, Michael. He said, hey, you've got to get in contact with Julian. He's doing some amazing things over in the UK with this Preston model that can really work in terms of kind of just learning and understanding the inner workings of hidden mechanisms to possibly apply some of the development strategies here in Bermuda. And as a result of that, all sorts of other wonderful things, and just recently hosted Dr. Jessica Nemhard on March the 30th, and we've been in just back and forth, all sorts of rich resources over the last 9 months, and we're excited to be able to kind of have Michael back. And as you all know, Michael was a part of the whole One Worker, One Vote team, the founder, and
one of the co-founders.
Co-founder and executive director now. So happy to have you back. We're doing some amazing work. You've been in over the last few days. You've had some great meetings today to be able to kind of open up new pipelines and foundations, just other ambassadors and champions in Bermuda, all for the benefit of yourselves. So I just want to kind of thank Denise, Matt. Denise, thank you for all the hard work that you've done, all the PowerPoint, all the organization and whatnot. Thank you so much as well. The BEDC team will kind of be arriving shortly. We've got like a full house today, so we're just kind of marshalling people along. So I'm just going to invite Wiley out. Wiley, just to be able to share the introduction. You've just come in today, Oklahomian, yes? Yes. I'm not sure if I said that right. Oklahoma, certainly made a name. Come on, Wiley. Yeah. Just certainly made a name for himself in oil and gas. I don't know too much about you, but you know a lot about this guy. Right. Perhaps you can help me introduce this amazing gentleman.
Well, I do appreciate the opportunity to visit and to spend some time with Michael and Michelle. My background is in oil and gas, and we've spent a lot of time in the last few years working on reducing the environmental impact of oil and gas production, specifically capturing methane emissions and developing some more processes for sustainable energy sources other than just taking hydrocarbons, burning them, and emitting them into the atmosphere. Our company and our foundation has worked to develop processes by which we can capture the energy that these products contain, but just because we take it out of the ground doesn't mean it has to end up in the air. So this journey that it's taken me on, being a kid raised in West Texas and in the oil and gas industry, to meeting people like Michael is that whenever we started discussing these processes from an environmental standpoint, I had an opportunity to get introduced to a completely different world and a completely different group of people than the ones that I had been raised with and associated with my whole life. And in that relationship is the solution to the problems, just like we're talking about today, in being able to create a society and a government structure that is more inclusive. And I think my relationship with Michael and so many people like him is that we come to this discussion with genuine intentions. It's not the good versus evil, it's not us versus them, it is only us. And in that mentality is the collective energy and the collective knowledge by which these issues are solved. So whenever I met Michael as a fellow board member at the American Sustainable Business Council, this whole group of people welcomed me with open arms. Well, they gave me a chance. Because at the end of the day, we have to get an opportunity to see where people come from and to see what their intentions are and what the long-range plans they have in the work that they're doing. And so it's just an honor for me to get a chance to spend time with Michael and to understand that there's the things that we disagree on are minor. Let's focus on and put the energy behind the things we do agree on, and I think great things can happen.
Thank you, Willie.
Thank you, Wiley.
Thank you, Wiley Woods. So, you know, if you Google Wiley Rhodes, you will find that he has set up factories in Nigeria, in India. He publishes articles in very esteemed scientific journals where he shows people how to take the hydrocarbons out of fossil fuels, and he has a patent to get clean fresh water out of the process. So he's the real deal. I'm just, you know, a couple of tiers below, but I'm happy to be in his company. And Jacqueline, thank you very much for making it. We met on the my first trip over here in December. We met at the airport in Philadelphia, and I asked you if you were from Bermuda. You said yes, sort of, lived there. Not from there, lived there. And married, just like Camille. And she gave me lots of advice, and then she came to our events, and then I said, well, I'm going to be back, and she changed her schedule to be here, so thank you very much. So welcome, everybody. And before we get started, what I'd like to do is I'd like to go around the room like this, and please just say your name, kind of what you're interested in. If you want to talk about what you do, that's fine. Keep it short, you know, so we get to everybody, and so I can say a few words at the end. So why don't we start with you, sir?
Sure. I'm Gordon Johnson. I'm very interested in a shared economy.
Oh, me? I'm sorry. My name is John A. Childers III, and my greatest concern right now is climate change, because Bermuda is sitting out here 600 miles away from everybody, and if something does happen to us, we got to figure out how we can take care of ourselves. Thanks.
Sure.
Right?
I guess I'm between east and west. My family's from Uganda, and they just discovered oil there. And I was raised in Brooklyn, New York, and my mom was from Bermuda. So I'm just trying to get a big picture.
I'm just trying to figure that out, the compass, right?
Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
Sir?
Hi, Bassett. I'm interested in water,
Oh, good. Well,
purification.
right, well, you just want to turn around and face that guy in the back. I'll do my best. Camille, why don't we go with you?
Good afternoon. My name is Camille Trott. I'm fairly new to the Bermuda area, and well, island, I should say. And I'm really interested in more cooperative initiatives and learning more about that.
Hi, my name is Sharon Revere. I'm a Bermudian. I'm not always in Bermuda, but I'm a Bermudian. I did my first food cooperative when I was 24 years old in Massachusetts. And people were complaining about food, and I said, well, let's buy it directly from the source. And so I did my first, my second one I did, I think, when I was in my 30s. So I'm really excited that we're even talking about this now, because it's so important. And I'm coming home soon.
Thank you so much. Sir?
Michael Bradshaw, and I'm here to find out how to start a cooperative with the Friendly Societies.
That's right. Michael, good to see you again. Thank you for coming with us to DC. Really.
My name is Ed Fox, Office of Project Management with Bermuda Government, and my particular interest is developing sustainable food resources here on island.
Great. My wife in the back, Michelle. Got to say something. You heard from Riley.
Hi, my name is Michelle. I'm an aerospace engineer. My particular interests are in advanced power supplies and sustainability.
And as you can tell, I married up.
Good evening. My name is Gwendolyn Prairie, and I'm just here out of curiosity. I I have no particular
Curiosity is a
need,
wonderful thing.
except curiosity.
That's great. Well, welcome. So glad. Yes, ma'am.
I'm Marianne Penner. I'm originally from Canada, from a co-op town. We had a lot of co-ops over there, and I just think it's exciting to start that in Bermuda.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jacqueline Lightbourne. Like Michael said, he and I met on the airplane, and I'm interested. I live here now. I'm from the States, and I'm interested in learning and doing anything I can to help Bermuda move along and progress in society.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
I'm Sherry Simmons, and I'm here to learn more about cooperatives and how they work in order to better be able to explain it to the wider community so they can envision how it is in action.
Good. Good,
Roy
sir.
Ferbert, Cooperative Initiative.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
My name is Glenn Basin. I myself are in government, reaching that age, of course, close to retirement. And I'm looking into the field of solar electric cars, possibly bringing them to Bermuda, and hopefully introducing them to a audience, of course, that will realize somewhere in the future that gas and oil will no longer be here.
Right. Absolutely. And our two audiovisual maestros. I'll just start with you.
Just general curiosity, because the cooperative model is just something I'm genuinely interested in.
Right.
My name is Dennis Guthrie. Kind of here to, well, to get what I hope I'm getting to get out of this is somewhat insight on what a cooperative is.
Good. So I'm going to thank you for telling me your stories, and I'm going to talk just a little bit, and then I'm going to ask you to ask me questions, because I think that's the best way, especially at this time of the day. An interactive conversation is so much better than a monologue. So I have a whole lot of slides here, but you have a copy of all of them, and I'm going to flip through them quickly and start off with some basic points. A cooperative is a for-profit business. People think that cooperatives are out there in Never Never Land and it's kumbaya and some kind of everything by consensus, meeting, death by committee. That's not it at all. Cooperatives are lean, they're just not mean. They're a lot nicer to their founders, and if they're a worker-owned cooperative, they're not a lot nicer to their workers. But first you have to be profitable. And you'd be surprised how many people in American audiences didn't understand you have to be profitable, that profitability part. If you're not profitable, you can't afford your own values. So you have to be profitable, so then you can put your values into motion. And there's a lot of values in cooperatives. There's 7 international values. There's Mondragon, the cooperative that I'm from, has 3 more. We have 10. Not because we're better on the value side, but we just thought that we needed 3 more, and I'll go through it, and they're listed on your chart. So the first thing to know is that cooperatives are a for-profit business, and worker cooperatives are owned and managed by their workers. But if you look at a cooperative structure, you find that operationally it's just like any business. You have a board, which happens to be the General Assembly. You have a CEO. You have a management team. And you have people doing all sorts of things in the enterprise. But if you're a worker cooperative, you have one worker, one vote. Everybody has a vote. All votes are equal. And in a Mondragon cooperative, everybody has a share, an equal share, and all shares are equal. And that is, you'll find that's a very competitive approach. And I'll explain that later on. The other thing I want to say before I get to the slides is that all our lives, people keep giving us false choices. They keep telling us you can have a good job, but you can't have a clean environment. You got to choose. They'll tell you that you can do this job, but you only get to this level. Or they'll tell you that great idea, but you don't have the background, you don't have the experience. They're always telling us, what we can't do. But it's up to us to tell ourselves what we can do. And basically, we can do anything. We can do anything we want. And I'm going to talk to you about our team in Cincinnati. People who make less than $24K a year. They come from a region in Cincinnati called Over the Rhine, which if you read about it, it was the most dangerous part of Cincinnati, everybody locked everything up at night. It's now getting gentrified a little bit. Gentrification, as we all know, has its downsides as well as its upsides. And what they did, these people decided that they were not going to sit still. They were not going to become passive victims. They were not going to allow someone else to make decisions about them. And they took matters into their own hands. And I was at that original meeting, and I watched them put their credit cards on the table and pool their resources and then work day and night, literally, 7 days a week. And now they have 6 profitable worker-owned cooperatives. It's in an ecosystem called the Cincinnati Union Cooperative Initiative. And that's my final introductory point, is that we all want to start cooperatives. But unless we start with an ecosystem idea, our cooperatives really won't stand the chance. We need each other in this cooperative movement, and one of the best examples of that, which I'll get to, is the Mondragon cooperative ecosystem. So, the people, planet, profit idea, that describes a whole community of businesses. In the U.S., we call them the triple bottom line community, because it's not just profit, it's people, planet, profit. In the European Union, they're called social enterprise. Both Wiley and I were on the board of something called the American Sustainable Business Council, ASBC. They unite over 250,000 triple bottom line businesses, and you will have heard of them. Ben & Jerry's for ice cream, New Belgium Brewery if you like to drink beer, Patagonia if you like to, dress in the wild, cool tent, and Dansko if you like women's shoes, and so forth and so on. And these business CEOs got up and said, it's a false choice to say that our bottom line is not profit. So they formed ASBC, and as Wiley said, that's how we met. And that is another example of how, and we have many cooperatives in ASBC, all different forms of cooperatives, and it's a convening, and it's about getting together and building a community. So what I hope to do tonight is I hope to, first of all, answer your questions, and I hope to give you some hope and thought about everything that I'm talking about is possible here in Bermuda. Matter of fact, through BEDC and the leadership of the unstoppable Mr. Spriggs back there in the back chair, we are actually doing things, and we're starting off creating communities, getting our thought processes aligned, getting our thinking solidarity, bringing together institutions, bringing up new ideas, saying, what if we did this? What if we did this in healthcare? What if we did this in energy? What if we did this in finance? What if we did this with sports clubs? What if we did this with sustainable housing? I keep saying that I know we'll be successful when we finally make a cooperative out of all of Bermuda's taxi drivers. Once we do that, I know we will have arrived at the nirvana of cooperativism, so we have a long way to go. All right, so our basic question is, how do we create an economy that works for all? We know what an economy is like that works for just a few people, but how do we create an economy that works for all? And it's totally possible. When you put profit over people for generations, when you commoditize labor, when you treat labor as a commodity, like a brick, like a piece of wood, like a stone, or jewelry, or anything having to do with food, right then you kind of lost the battle, because the human resource is exactly that. It is a resource. It is an unfettered, divinely created, unlimited resource. And when people try to say, we're going to commoditize your labor, we're going to price on your labor, and you're limited to the price that our industry puts on your labor, they are stopping your growth. And it was so interesting to read McKinsey, which is not, a source that I ascribe to because they gave us Enron and some other natural disasters. But McKinsey did come out this December and say only 20% now of the world's largest industries are looking for low-cost labor. Because low-cost labor is not where the economy is going. Where the economy is going is highly trained people, high-cost labor, leadership, the ability to navigate new doorways, walk through those doorways, new frontiers, the ability to grow, the ability to connect on social media, the ability to innovate, the ability to go past silos, past borders, past geographies. That's the kind of labor that people are looking for. That is high-cost labor. So this old equation that we've been living with, where if we're cheap, they will come, you can throw that out the window because that is no longer valid. Now, is it, if we're trained, if we're flexible, if we can move quickly, if we're entrepreneurial, then they will come. And there's a price for that. And it's a high price, and we get to set a lot of that price ourselves. So I would just say that this is yesterday's model, putting a commoditizing price on labor, and the new model is, you set your own price. So it's the same thing, creating an economy that equally prioritizes people, planet, and profit. So I want to talk to you a little about Mondragon and what the cooperative ecosystem is. And some of you, and I thank you all, have been to some of our other events here. And so I won't, make this a long speech. I could actually talk about it for years, but I won't. But this is an example. And examples are important because, all of us need to kick the tires to make sure things are real. I mean, Doubting Thomas, he had to look through the holes in the hand. All of us, you can get people like me who can talk and get up in front of you and say, yes, you can do this and it exists, but if you can't feel it yourself, then it's not going to work for you, right? So this is an area of the world where they went through the Spanish Civil War on the wrong side. It would have been the side I would have fought on. It was the side against Franco and against dictatorships and fascists. But they lost. I mean, Franco won, right? Spain had a dictatorship for 40 years. But they were on the wrong side of that, and then they were on the wrong side of World War II. How many people here have seen or know about Picasso's Guernica painting? Have you seen that? Yeah. So Guernica is a town in the Basque region where Franco decided to let Hitler and Mussolini practice their aerial flight. Remember that? And they strafed that town, and Picasso painted it. I mean, that was one of the atrocities before World War II started. So these people essentially were in this mountainous town with nothing. I mean, they were producing rubble. Unemployment was 55%. They had famine. They had cholera. They had every disconnecting disease known to society. And up shows this village priest. He wasn't the priest that was assigned to this village. The priest that was assigned showed up, looked at it, quit, left. He was the guy with one patch over his eye on a bicycle who showed up. And for 15 years, he preached solidarity. He preached cooperation. He preached collaboration. He preached what Wiley said, that together all of us are so much more than any one of us, that the whole is greater than the sum of the parts, that if we unite and we combine our forces, we are unstoppable. It took him 15 years. He had to organize soccer games because soccer games were a way to bring people together. Finally, 4 graduates of a technical school that he helped to found started a little kerosene stove cooperative. That cooperative over time grew to be a $2.2 billion cooperative. 20, 30, 40 cooperatives started up. They started their own bank. Well, the priest said we need to go to a bank because we need financing to grow. They went to the banks. The bank said, well, you're a cooperative. What's that? I mean, that's mineral, vegetable. I mean, what is a cooperative? So they had to start their own bank. That little school became a university. Today it's a $16 billion corporation, 71,000 worker owners, one of the most profitable banks in the world. The university has 7,000 students. It's a cooperative university. And the little mutual that they started is now, got $8 billion in assets. Financial Times says it's one of the 10 wonders of the world in which to work. And they get 4,000 visitors a year for industrial tourism, whether they want it or not. So this is a perfect example of Mondragon, and the government had nothing to do with it. The government had nothing to do with it. They did it all themselves. So this is an example of what you can do, starting from nothing, if you want to create a cooperative ecosystem. And so, like I said, how did they do this? They did it together. That's really the bottom line on that. Solidarity culture. This you can't read. I mean, if you can read, you've got much better eyes than I can, and I'm standing right over here. But these are the 10 principles of Mondragon. Open admission, democratic organization, sovereignty of labor, participation in management, instrumental and subordinate nature of capital, wage solidarity, intercooperation, universality, social transformation, and education. Dr. Michael. Education is definitely on the list here, And I'm going to talk about one of these, which is the sovereignty of labor. we go to banks, private equity people, people with money, and we say, yes, we come from this culture where we believe in this sovereignty of labor and the subordinate nature of capital, and then they run out of the room. But in fact, what they're saying is that labor is a treasured resource, that every human being is a treasured person, and that finance should serve labor, not the other way around. And when you are part of your own cooperative and you get to set the rules, then you can put that into motion. You get that freedom. How many people feel financially free in this world? Very, very few, only the upper 1%. We want to extend that sense of freedom to everybody. So, very important, one worker, one vote, what we're doing, I won't go into that, we're taking the Mondragon model, we're localizing it throughout the United States, a lot of different cities. We're working with Preston, UK, the Preston model. If the Labour Party ever gets into power, and it looks like they may soon, and you guys are part of the Commonwealth here, so you're much closer to that than I am. But the Preston model, Preston was an industrial city that was like Cincinnati over the Rhine. It had all the statistics going the wrong way, and they took a page out of the Mondragon book, and they turned it around. So that's why, and we had Dr. Julian Manley through BEDC come here and talk. So what do we have right now? We have 9 co-op networks launching in 9 cities around the country. We're in 20 cities, and we have over 200 people every time we do a national symposium. And we have our 6 profitable co-ops in Cincinnati in our ecosystem there. So while we have a long way to go, we're making progress. This gentleman here is a guy named Leo Gerard. He is the international president of the United Steelworkers Union, and he was one of the visionaries behind this, as well as some of the people from Mondragon. And the reason why this slide is important is because, we tend to keep people in silos, but the trick is to break down the silos. And labor and cooperatives actually were invented in Rochdale, England in the 1840s by something called the Rochdale Partners. I mean, unions and co-ops came out in front for the first time in northwestern England. And then they separated over time, but we think we want to bring them back because cooperatives bring economic democracy and labor brings solidarity. So what is a Mondragon-style co-op? Well, it's a for-profit business owned and directed by the workers. And how is it structured? You have a board of directors, management, union committee, and what do unions bring to the co-ops? They bring solidarity. And what do co-ops bring to the unions? They bring economic democracy. And what does a network of hybrid shared ownership models look like? It looks like this. And this is what we're doing in Cincinnati. We're providing education and training. We're expanding our businesses. We're developing best practices. We're setting aside a rainy day fund. So if things go south, and they always go south, right? I mean, structure is not going to stop you from confronting a market force. Just like you can have all the great insurance programs here and your amazing houses in Bermuda that are made of stone and just incredible houses. In my next life, I want to have a Bermudian house. But they won't stop the weather from coming at you. But what they do is they give you the opportunity to live to fight another day. It's how you get up and pick yourself up, how you absorb that blow and move on. That's what cooperatives are so good. When the graphs are going up, everybody's a genius. But it's when the graphs that go down, you separate who's who and what's what. And academic metrics prove without a shadow of a doubt, pick your school, University of Wisconsin at Madison, Rutgers University, Harvard Business School, they've all done the same research and it says the same thing. Worker-owned enterprises are more resilient in downturns. The people are more productive, they stay together, they figure out how to fight back, and their productivity is higher. So if Bermuda is looking at a long-range solution for how we build an economy that works for all, the best way to do this is to worker-owned enterprises, because you're more resilient when the downturn comes, whether it's climate or whether it's industrialization or the new thing that all of a sudden says, we're not going to have taxi drivers in Bermuda anymore because we're going to have, robots driving our cars. Now, first of all, the robots have to learn how to drive on your side of the road, so that's the first thing. But I'll tell you an anecdote about Finland. Good things come from everywhere. There's not one place that has a monopoly on the truth. So everyone's talking about, well, you know, artificial intelligence and robots, they're going to drive all of us out of business. We're going to lose all our jobs. You can't go to a conference on the future of work without people worrying. Well, in Finland, they have the taxi driver. And he or she drives a taxi. But he or she also stops, turns on the oven for his or her clients, watches the kids when they're home from school, if that's part of the contract, waters the pansies in the garden, if that's what he or she has to do, lets the dog out, and does all those things that no robot, no matter how cool the algorithm, will ever be able to do. And oh, by the way, he or she drives a taxi. So by expanding the circle and repurposing the human being back into the center of the equation, all of a sudden, there's no robot that can supplant the taxi driver. And our simple premise is you can do that to every single industry. You just have to be in a position to redraw the circle. And it helps when you're the owner, the co-owner of that business, and you have an equal voice and a vote. So these are all the different enterprises. I won't go through them all. And the services that we do, here's the urban farm that we started from nothing. We now supply all the green vegetables to Cincinnati State University. We have farmer market networks, 40 acres inside Cincinnati. This is Sustainergy. This is an entity that goes to working class homes and lowers the carbon footprint of that home by insulation, by different ways of lowering the energy needs, and they pay for this out of the savings of the monthly energy bill in about 3 months. This is our fastest growing co-op. It was started by an undocumented immigrant from Peru who then got his degree from Cincinnati State University in finance, and now they're going to make an acquisition. So, you know, unstoppable, right? Affordable housing. This is started by 2 African American women, Marjorie and Grace. They're totally brilliant. They, you know, the thing with public housing, why is public housing so expensive? Public housing is so expensive in the U.S. because of turnover. So if you could lower the cost of turnover, you could decrease the cost of public housing. And so what they do is they go to public housing entities and they come up with a code of all the things that public housing needs to do in order to keep itself, you know, at market level. And people take on these assignments, and they have to attend a weekly meeting, and they get points. And with 5 years of doing this, they earn enough money to make their down payment on their unit. And then you have everybody making that down payment on their unit. They get a mortgage, they own their units, and the transition happens, and it's no longer public housing. It's now called cooperative housing. And you can do this public housing unit by public housing unit by public housing unit. You can do it here in Bermuda. It's totally possible. So we have lots of large-scale co-ops in the United States, some that we've helped. We helped immigrants from Western Somalia in Denver start Green Taxi. It's a whole story behind that, but I can talk to you after. This is Lobster 207. This is what I really like, because, you know, in Bermuda, you know, what I learned is you guys import everything. You import everything, and that's not a good thing. You want to export something. Besides your incredible history and people and everything like that. So the trick is, how do we build an economy that works for all, and how do we get our exporting mojo back? That's a big question. So in Maine, in the state of Maine, lobstering, they're called lobstermen, but there's women on those boats, but the women call themselves lobstermen, so I'm not saying something wrong by saying that. But lobstering is a $6 billion business. It's a generational business. It's been handed down by generation, lobster boat by lobster boat. But these people are disorganized, and the big, you know, commercial fishing fleets with, you know, offshore money come in, they trawl up all the lobster, they lower the brand, they pollute, there's red tide, and they have no representation. So they teamed up with the Machinists Union, and they formed Lobster 207. If you Google Lobster 207, you'll find Union Lobster. That could be overnighted to you any place in the world. We now have over 3,000 lobstermen and women in this, and we've turned this industry around. And we also changed the way Maine looks at healthcare and looks at the environment. So, you know, a little bit of local solidarity, making an industry profitable, cleaner, higher wages, better conditions, more solidarity, and all of a sudden the big public sector picture changes. Now, it didn't happen overnight. It took years. It took 3 years of fighting to get that green taxi in Denver. So you have to start the fight, and you have to be there for the 15th round when the bell rings. But if you can do it, if you can hang in there and do it, and in larger circles, then these miracles are not miracles. They're everyday occurrences. So how do you start a hybrid shared ownership? And hybrid, that's my favorite model, especially for the United States. We're an immigrant nation. Immigration, being hybrid is who we are. It's what we do. So thank you very much for coming. I really appreciate it.
I apologize.
No, I know you have to leave, but thank you for coming. Hybrid is who we are and what we do. And what that means is that there's no one size fits all. So we're coming with the work that BEDC is doing. We're in the beginning of creating the Bermuda model. The Bermuda model will be different than all of the other models. It'll be indigenous to Bermuda. It'll reflect what Bermuda's all about, your history, your culture, the people, what people are. This is an extremely entrepreneurial island. I've only been here 2 times, but I am impressed by how entrepreneurial and smart people are here, how many jobs they work, and how innovative people are. If anybody could build a local hybrid model, it's the Bermudan model by you guys. So, and what are our strategies? We support the launch of co-op businesses, we transition to worker ownership, and we support existing co-ops. Now, we don't start off, claiming perfection. I mean, like I said, there's no perfect model. There's no one way to do this. Sometimes people want to be absolute about everything. Okay, we have to have perfect economic democracy. Okay, and that doesn't work. I mean, you still need capital, and so you need to have investors. You need to, make business pitch 101s on your business model. It has to work. You have to show good management. You have to show sustainability. You have to show why you're going to have clients. You have to show your price and performance competitive. You have to do all those things. But after it's over, after you do those things, then you get to decide what you do with your profits. And it's deciding what you do with your profits is where the magic happens. You can pay yourself. You can all vote. All the members of the cooperative can vote to pay yourself, and some cooperatives do that. But not if they want to stay in business. Or you can vote to reinvest in what makes your business go. And that's what makes cooperatives work. I always say that the worker owner is a natural and fascinating contradiction. The worker part of the worker owner wants the highest possible salary that he or she can negotiate. But the owner part of the worker owner wants the rising equity of the enterprise. And that means that's a contradiction, but resolving that contradiction is how you earn your marketplace chops. It's how you earn your marketplace freedom. Because only you can resolve that for yourself. And when you have a voice and a vote, you're empowered to do that. And when you get people who arrive at the same conclusion from that point of absolute freedom, then you have something that cannot be stopped, like the human spirit. So we support the launch of new businesses. We transition to worker ownership. In the United States, we have this thing called the silver tsunami. In boomers like me, there's going to be 20,000 businesses a year for the next year where there's no handoff. The kids don't want it, but maybe the workers might. And that's a great opportunity. If you know businesses like that in Bermuda, jump on those because they'll be open to cooperatives and maybe the workers want to buy the business. And then we have BEDC with their loan guarantees and their ability to find finance that can help the financing, and we create a virtuous cycle. And then transition to worker owner, that's Flecker Vera, who started Sustainer. I told you about shaking hands with a firm that just brought him a big contract. And we support existing co-ops. And so opportunities in Bermuda. When we were here, we came up with 12 different opportunities. It's listed on the slide. And now we're starting to follow some of them. And we came up with all the different assets in Bermuda and the immediate challenges and the systemic challenges, and that's all in your handout. So I'm not going to repeat them. And this is about some of the tools that Mondragon has used that we can adopt. That they're adopting in Brooklyn, they're adopting in Cincinnati, in Atlanta, other places around the U.S. We can adopt them here to help. And so, start your own hybrid shared services model, cooperative ecosystem. That's my basic pitch. And now we'll take the toughest questions you can ask me. Okay, so thank you. So who has questions? Thank you.
Yeah, we want to give you a clap, Mike.
All right, give me a clap. Thank you, thank you. I clap back. All right, so who has a question?
I'll go
Okay, please.
first.
And then,
Yeah, thank you so much for that. Always thought-provoking and certainly impactful for where we are now as a virgin kind of ecosystem. A large part of the value, and you bring tons of value in so many sectors, is changing the mindset.
Mhm.
You know, from me to we.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And those of us in the room now, you know, I think we've heard within the introductions is we've heard, you know, I want to start my own co-op in this particular sector. I just want to help Bermuda. You know, it kind of ranges. You know,
Right.
it's a wide spectrum. So, you know, for those of us here that want to help, we want to influence, we want to do more, what are some of the first things that we obviously, you know, keep showing up to these types of seminars and workshops? What are the first, what's the 80-20? What must we do right now to be able to help build a pyramid up off the ground?
right, okay. Great question. So first thing we do is we talk to the entrepreneurs in our midst. You know, all of us are entrepreneurial in different ways. All of us want change, or we wouldn't be in this room when you could be doing something else. So there are entrepreneurs in Bermuda. You meet them everywhere. Driving a taxi, talking to somebody in a store. Everybody here's got an idea. Pick the entrepreneur in the business that resonates to you, and start forming stakeholders around that idea and that person. For example, Jacqueline, you're an accountant. You know, cooperatives need great accountants. We need good lawyers. We need people who know how to legally set up cooperatives and how to make sure that they are set up and as they expand the right way. We need to know how to share intellectual property. We need to know how, what kind of tax systems should we have in Bermuda that favor the creation of cooperatives. We need to know what kind of courses we should teach in our schools in the College of Bermuda, University of Bermuda here, so that we train people who manage cooperatives, because managing in a cooperative is very different than managing in a vertical industry. With cooperatives, you don't say, because I told you so. That doesn't work. You inspire someone to agree with you, which means you have to explain it. The downside is that takes more time. The upside is, in cooperatives, as I said before, people have a much higher degree of financial literacy. You actually have smarter workers. When you have smarter, more informed workers, they are more productive, and you have a better enterprise, and you have a better culture. So you have to start education. You have to invest in the skills that make cooperatives work. You have to encourage entrepreneurs. You have to invest in research and development around the industries that you're locating in, so that you're, as the Spanish say, you are puntera, you know, you are competitive. And then you have to put it all together. You have to organize your neighborhoods, you have to organize your 9 parishes, and you have to go organize your government. Someone told me that Bermudians love to get out there and demonstrate when they're upset. Well, you know, you can demonstrate against something, and you can demonstrate for something. And if you demonstrate for cooperatives, this is a place of 66,000 people, you know, your voice will be heard. Does that sort of get to where you're going?
And the second part, I don't want to, you know, obviously, because that really leads it on. You know, we're always looking at how we can create value and be very, very honest with. Okay, so what you just mentioned there: invest, organize, neighborhood leadership, convening. Yeah, time. Time. I have the skills, but I'm busy, and I would like to be compensated in some. You know, I've got a huge, not me, obviously, but this is someone thinking like this.
Right.
I've got a, you know, huge kind of, you know, just human spirit, and I want to give back, but I just can't give it all for free. Right. What can we do, BEDC, to be able to kind of create, maybe it's some sort of funding, maybe it's some sort of kind of forward-thinking sort of compensation, you know, remuneration once the co-op gets started, then leaders and early adopters putting in the extra work, the sweat equity, they're compensated in some way that makes sense.
Right.
And that's worthwhile to their effort, you know, rather than everyone else just kind of coming in on level 2 or 3, they were at level 1, just in the trenches.
Right, right. So as a guy who spends his whole life in the trenches and actually like it there, I can totally relate to your question. I think that government can do something. Government can change procurement policies. So this is an island nation that buys everything from somewhere else. If there was a procurement policy that favored local product, now the local product would have to be price and quality competitive. We're not asking for handouts here. That's the opposite, the very opposite of what we're trying to do. We're just asking for opportunity. But for example, in New York City, they have a 30% set aside for minority-owned businesses for city procurement. So that encourages the formation of minority businesses. If you have a set aside for cooperative businesses in certain areas where it makes sense, like food production, like energy, solar energy, we have a huge program throughout the United States called cooperative solar. If you look at US elections, you know the part of the map that's all red, not the part that I vote for, but you know the part that's all red? Yeah, well those are the people that are doing cooperative solar. Those are the people that are doing cooperative solar. And it's not because they're in love with renewable energy. It's because they're in love with energy independence. That's what they like. So you can appeal to people to get together and do things that make sense to them, and then all of a sudden you have critical mass. So energy is, solar is made to happen. Healthcare procurement here. You have a big hospital, you have 2 clinics, you have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of practitioners. You had 60,000 people admitted last year or in 2017 for various things. I mean, all these institutions are buying their stuff separately. You could have a procurement cooperative that could buy them together. You could save money. You could pass the money on to consumers. You could, that would be patience. That would be all of us one day or another. So you can do these things, and when you get to the point where you achieve critical mass, people start seeing the tipping point. They start getting excited, and then it's pile on. Then it's, you know, how do you hold us back? What William is talking about is how do you get us up to that point. So right now, we're at the beginning. We started this thing last year, with really last November, right? That was the first formal presentation with Julian's. And then we came here with the team, and then Jessica came, and I'm here, and other people will come, so that you have a rich diversity of people with different viewpoints, but all talking about the same thing and how to do stuff. And we're hoping to get you excited and interested so that you start then coming up with business ideas, and then you come back to BEDC, which is a place where they take your business deal and their business idea, and they work with you to how to make it a reality. And that's what we need right now. We need business ideas from the people who are interested. You can there are educational cooperatives. Procurement cooperatives, they buy all the things for educational institutions. If you add up the number of educational institutions in Bermuda, I don't know what the number is, but I'm sure it's quite the public and the private, and they probably all buy separately. Why can't they all buy together? Why can't we have an educational procurement cooperative? It's just that no one's organized that. So it's time to organize these industries. Next question, sir.
Yeah,
And you always ask me a great question every time, so I'm ready for a
You
really tough
shouldn't
one
have
here.
done that to me. My concern, and it's more because scientists are saying that the climate change is going to really develop itself in terms of the ocean and lack of food and stuff like that inside the next 10 years.
Right.
So I will be honest with you, I wasn't looking at the profit side of it, but I was looking at the ability to keep us alive. And while, you know, some people believe that islands will go under, Bermuda doesn't have to be that island, or one of those islands. So for me, it was, okay, I've been to a number of people who've spoken about developing seawalls and levees and going up into Holland and looking at the barriers that they've introduced in Amsterdam and things like that. But I've also spoken about developing food farms or indoor farms, and even outdoor farms, trying to making sure that we have enough food. Since America has already put out a red light, said they're running out of food. They've already said that several times this year. They've constantly said it. We're running out of food. Now we're 600 miles off of the American coast. We're thousands of miles from the UK. So what do we do? Our dependence has to be, like you said, on us. So I need, like you said, I need accountants, I need lawyers to sit on and say, look, what is it we have to put in place in order to make sure that we are able to sustain ourselves and make sure that our grandchildren, great-grandchildren, great-grandchildren are gonna be okay. Because right now, the way things are going, we don't have much options, except perhaps going on to, say, Belize or somewhere down south, and for the time being, getting them to work with us to develop food until we can raise our farms here in Bermuda and create food for ourselves. But in the interim time, we're gonna have to go down to one of those places and get some food to make sure that if America says we can't send you no more, you've got some food.
Right. So let me try to answer that because, and we've had this conversation before, and it is a very important point, and it's something that it's pay me now or pay me later. I mean, it's something that has to be answered now. So cooperatives bring self-sufficiency. They also bring interdependency among other cooperatives, but that's a good thing. But they bring self-sufficiency, and you're right. Bermuda needs to take control back over its food supply. And we have all sorts of different kinds of new food technologies. We have hydroponic. I mean, if you're building a building, you can now do it on every single floor. We have all sorts of different technologies to use your climate. We have wave technology for energy.
Yeah.
We have aquaculture technology. The fact that Bermuda imports the fish that it eats, to me, just blows my mind. Right? Makes no sense. So if we get together and come up with simple business plans. A business plan is not Encyclopedia Britannica. It's not that big. You can do like a little 2-pager, and you can actually do it online and fill in the dots. I mean, it's not rocket science. I'm sorry, my wife is in that field. It's not complicated. It just requires a good idea, and you have to answer the questions. And so if you figure out what is the consumption of fish in Bermuda, just to use that example, what is the cost of exporting it, what is the profit margin, what is the technology that we could use, what could we produce, how can we undersell that which is imported, then you have a business case, and then you round up all these incredible Bermudan fishing. I know you have fishing. Someone was telling me at the airport on this trip that they're going off on fishing trips, and Bermudians love to fish, and you guys are good at it.
Yeah.
Guys is a generic term, so you're good at it too, but you're good at it, so why can't you do that in a way combined with technology and make a business out of it and be self-sufficient? It just requires claiming your own freedom. And at the end of the day, when we talk about cooperatives, we talk about solidarity culture, we're really talking about claiming your own economic freedom. Economic freedom is really important because it gives you a voice and a vote. And you know that old saying, nobody washes a rental car. Do you think the people in Flint, Michigan, do you think the people in Flint, Michigan would have had a water problem if they owned their water utility? There is no way. So that's exactly what we're saying here. All right, next question. Sir.
Just before you go, real quick,
I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah, just
right here.
John. BEDC is one of the government's platform initiatives is to develop vertical farming. And so if anyone in the room or knows anyone, nieces, nephews, aunts, uncles, we'd love to talk to those individuals because we have all sorts of ideas, concessions, incentives, programs that we're developing to foster the increase of vertical farming on the island.
And John, you have a real passion for this subject. You've done a lot of research on it. You're very articulate when you talk about it. You should go out, team up with them, and organize. That's what I think.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted your opinion on a product, of course, that I'm developing in reference to solar, and it's changing the mindsets of Bermudians who have, for a number of years, always used gas vehicles. And I've been doing the research on it in reference to solar energy cars. And of course, with solar cars, I think that the panels which are on the roof absorb at least about 25% of the solar rays to charge a battery every day. So within 4 days, your batteries are fully charged, providing you haven't driven the car. And to charge your vehicle on a EV slow, they call it a T-type charger, is roughly about 8 to 10 hours a day, slow charge, because fast charge can ruin your battery. So if you plug your battery in your car at 9 o'clock at night, 8 o'clock in the morning, you can unplug it, it's fully charged. And I'm trying to develop this mindset of changing to these vehicles. Of course, they don't go any more than 50 to 60 kilometers, and not very, very fast.
35 miles an hour.
And that's the speed. But a lot of them, of course, have to have a what they call a tilt or degree of 25 or 35% grade, which they're in development of doing now. How would you, in your professional opinion, bring this forth to change the mindsets of people, of course, to get away from gas and go to electric solar vehicles?
Okay, so I'm not as smart as you are, and I definitely don't know as much as you know about this field. So if you honor my intent and forgive my ignorance, I'll try to give you an answer. So first of all, we have a lot of cities that are getting charging prepositioning right. And we can study them. And we can study them online. We don't have to go anywhere. We can, we can look at what Denver's doing, what Seattle's doing, other cities are doing, getting ready for the EV, for the electric vehicle. We can also look at, who's manufacturing which kind of electric vehicle and understand, what is the best model for Bermuda. Is it going to be the Tesla, maybe for Tucker's Landing, but not for the rest of the island, right? So what's going to be best for, but for Bermuda is going to be, a small, nimble, easy to get into, like a Honda, something like that. And then we're going to look at the kind of battery or thin film that's put over the car, because that technology is rapidly changing, and it's changing so fast. People are coming up with so much innovation that if you invest in it right now, you will miss tomorrow's investment. So you have to figure out a technology refresher part of your equation so that you don't get caught, in yesterday's model, because that will become too expensive. So I think that first of all, everybody seems to have a car around here. If I lived here, I'd try to get on one of those cool Velos, although I first have to learn how to do one. But it seems like that's the smartest way, and everyone I talk to who has a motorcycle is pretty happy, so you may want to think about the motorcycle version. But if I was in Bermuda and I wanted to do this, I would first start by perhaps talking to who are the people responsible for selling vehicles, and what are their plans to bring all sorts of EVs. And how would you like to be part of that industry? Could you bring the charging capability to that? Could you bring the technology refresher part of that? Could you bring a different, could you use you're retiring from the government, could you use your government experience to maybe start teaching a course at the local university here to get people involved, especially young people? Most young people want to drive renewable vehicles. Most people, they're into that technology. How can we make this a generational thing and use them as the drivers to get your business located? Things like that as a start. And that's collecting an awful lot of data. And along the way, you're building community. And when you build community, you'll find that other people have great ideas that will help you. You don't have to do it by yourself. That's when you should think about forming a cooperative.
And the good thing is the prices are dropping.
They are.
The lithium battery is now dropping.
That's right.
The gel maintenance free
That's
acid
right.
battery is dropping.
That's right.
The lead acid battery, which you can charge, full
Right.
charge will give you something like 130 kilometers a day, which Bermudians don't drive that anyway.
Right.
If you use your AC and air conditioning, it can give you about 90 kilometers a day.
Right. Michelle, do you want to say anything about that? Because you know so much more about this than I do. It's not funny. So anything you want to say about that kind of technology?
Well, I know they're popping up a lot around the United States in terms of the charging stations, which are being noted, and now the document.
Opportunity to come up with some very clear procurement, tax favorability, education policies that will encourage people to do this. And it's a light touch. You don't need a heavy touch. You don't need to kick the ball. You need to just tap it so that it spins in the right direction. Because the best government is the government that does its thing and then gets out of the way. Lets the private sector do what it's supposed to do with standards. clean air, clean water, good government, great immigration policy. Go ahead.
I was wondering if Glenn felt, your name is Glenn, right?
Yes, that's right.
Did you feel that you got a satisfactory response to your question, or was it slightly missed? Because I got the impression from your question that you were hoping for mindset kind of responses from people, how to mindset change. That was my feeling from your question, right?
Well, Bermudians are
So,
one of
so
the
my response to Glenn's
hardest
question,
people to.
if I had to answer it, like the other people answered, but I think you were more going on the technical side. I think Glenn has done enough research to be, up on technology.
Right.
What he's asking is, how do I go about initiating, my product into the marketplace as it is with the trends, because the electric cars are already filtering in and the hybrids and all of that. But what Glenn is saying is, I think I have an even better technology, which is the wave of the future. How do I position myself to be able to enter this market amongst all this?
Right.
Right?
Right.
But
And what I
changing the
was
mindsets of people as well.
Pardon?
And changing the mindsets
Right.
of people
So
who
what
love
I was
gas.
thinking is, people often are more likely to try something that is free. Like tonight, this meeting was free.
Yes.
If you had a price on it, you'd probably get a lower response.
Right.
So what I'm saying is, let's say in public transportation, buses. Now government, from what I understand, they're replacing at the rate of 8 per year now the existing type technology, right? At the best that is available today. But they are thinking long term, eventually we might want to do electric buses.
Right.
That's what I hear
That's
coming
right.
back in the community talking.
Right.
And what I'm saying is, if the government has the will to go in that direction, your next move should be to be in there when government decision makers are making those decisions to go in that direction, along with whatever else they're doing in the meantime, right? You see what I'm saying, where I'm going with this?
I follow you, yeah.
You gotta position
Yeah.
yourself
Yeah.
with your technology so that when government are making decisions for their fleets, for their private vehicles, that the GP vehicles and all of that those people are using, and they don't have to pay for them, they just get in them every morning and drive them. And if they're satisfied with the performance of it, they might decide to buy it for themselves personally. Follow me? So that's how you change the mindset, because now they're using it every day for the government. It doesn't cost me anything. And I kind of like this vehicle I'm driving. It doesn't cost me anything. My next vehicle, when I replace it, I might like to try one of these and pay for it.
I've had to
I
jump.
thought that's what his question was.
I think you did a much better job than I did in answering it. Thank you very much. I think,
But
thank
with the
you.
number of hoops you have to jump through to get to where I am now, I haven't, of course I have this plan. It's into motion. It is now to change the mindsets of the Bermudians to buy into this so that you could sustain some sort of profit.
And I'm sorry, what is your first name, sir?
Clyde.
Clyde. So, building on what Clyde just said, Glenn, do you is your idea trademarked or patented?
No, it's not.
So I would get with a lawyer. That's the first thing I would do. Do you have a business plan?
I do.
Okay, is it a regular business plan, or is it more of a vision statement?
No, it
And
is
I ask that out of
written
huge
business-
respect.
It is a written business.
Okay, so you have a business plan, and have you taken it to anybody to review yet?
Just a small business.
Okay, so BDC.
Yeah, we've spoken.
Okay, great. So out of that conversation, and then the ideas that you mentioned, you can start building a bigger stakeholder circle, and that's what I think has to happen now. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
A question I have is help me understand the co-ops. I realize the U.S. is big, but this whole idea of co-op says to me socialism. Socialism is a bad word in Bermuda.
Yeah.
It's a bad word in the USA.
Some places.
Yes, that's why I say U.S. being a. So what's the difference in places in the U.S. where it's not a bad word, and give me something about it.
So first of all, you're an academic. Am I correct in that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I am not. So I'm going to be very careful with my words. First of all, a cooperative is the antithesis of socialism. Socialism is when the state owns, is that correct?
I'm not a political scientist. I consider Jesus Christ to be a socialist.
Oh, okay,
The
well,
state didn't own it.
right, well, that might change my whole mind about that. So let me just answer that by saying that a cooperative is a very entrepreneurial, capitalist entity. The difference is that the workers are the owners and the managers. And the culture of that cooperative evolves from that fundamental hold on power, but it still has to compete. The Mondragon cooperatives, they compete against the Germans in engineering, they compete against the Italians in design. If they didn't have their price point correctly, they'd lose.
Can I sort of?
Sure, please.
Maybe I should have asked the question better. I think the problem is that capitalism says, I work, I make money, belongs to me, I give it to my children. Socialism, co-ops, different variations say, we all work. And today you may work harder than I do, but in the long run, we're all working and we're all sharing. And we know that we're all not contributing exactly the same, but we're all going to earn it. We're all going to earn it, we're all going to earn it, and we all passes on to all of our children. Not, it goes to my children, but not to the other children in the community. And some places have accepted that, some places haven't.
So let me just,
yeah.
okay, so I now get it
Yeah,
right.
sorry.
So and I'm just speaking from my experience. In my experience, cooperatives don't have any room for slackers. Because of the fact it is everybody's company and it is everybody's money, the peer pressure is really intense. And if we're all got a voice and a vote, and Joe over here isn't cutting it, Joe is really going to hear about it from everybody, because there's a lot of equality in that opinion, and there's nothing stopping anybody from expressing that opinion. So to me, cooperatives are more competitive in terms of the peer pressure than, let's say, a vertically run institution where you can get away with whatever the bigger the organization, because that's what happens, right? In small businesses, when there's 4 or 5 people in a room, everybody knows what everybody's doing. If one person doesn't do it, that whole thing starts falling apart because they know, they're close to it. They can't miss a heartbeat. Cooperatives are the same way, and when they get bigger, the culture, if the culture is good, it still keeps that mentality. So I would say that I would make a difference. I wouldn't use the word socialism. I would define capitalism in 2 different ways. There's predatory capitalism, which is the kind that nobody likes, and there's virtuous cycle or enlightened capitalism where everybody has an equal chance. And I think what we're aiming to do here is create a society where everyone has an equal chance. You still have to do the work. You still have to put in the time. You still have to produce, because if you don't, what, the next guy's going to do it? That's not going to work. But if you all do it together and you are profitable, then you vote for the distribution of that capital. And when you get your share, you can decide whether you want to leave it to your children. And so another decides, no, I'm going to leave it to my school, or I'm going to invest it in a new business. Like I see all the time happening in Bermuda, people spinning off businesses all the time. So what you do with that capital, when it finally comes to you, you have, every choice is open whether you're in a cooperative or not. But what the cooperative does, it says you have the right to decide what happens to the profit of your business, and it doesn't get shipped off somewhere else where they only had a detached relationship. They may have supplied the money, but they didn't make it happen. In a cooperative, it's up close and personal. That's the difference. Yes, sir. Next question.
We have a challenge in Bermuda with a lot of disenfranchised youth. Can you think of a model that has been implemented that is focused on young adults?
Yes.
And has developed into a successful business?
Yes, I can. And that's a great question. So in Mondragon, we have a co-op called ALECOOP, A-L-E-C-O-O-P. It's one of our oldest co-ops. You know, Mondragon is a working class town. The university is not expensive it's like a community college in terms of costs in the US. But still there's people in the old days that couldn't afford it. And so for those students that went there, they created this co-op called Ale Coop, which sells educational products, where the students could go in on a part-time job basis and learn how to work and manage inside a co-op while they were studying at Mondragon University, which is a cooperative university. What Ale Coop has done is it's incubated these students into the cooperative culture, which takes the sense of disenfranchisement and replaces it with solidarity, and it replaces it with people, you know, repurposing their lives and going in a more positive direction and doing great things and letting their ingenuity, you know, like creating a video company or whatever else their genius leads them to do. And the other thing this co-op has done is it's had a huge impact on people leaving prison, because, you know, which is a problem that every society has, no matter how big they are or how small. The re-entry problem is one of the things that drags us down. It's like a tax we put on ourselves, and it is disproportionate on people of color, whether we're in Bermuda or in the United States. So what they've done is they pay commercial living, family sustaining wages to people while they are still incarcerated to do something in industries with high margins, like solar installation. And when they come out, they have a job skill in a market that needs their labor, and they're employed, and they have a much better shot. This is called thinking smarter, not richer. And it's a science, but it's something that we can totally practice again with the use of government setting standards, but then not getting in the way. So it's totally possible, and we can take the Ale Coop model, which has been exported now to Mexico, I think to Peru, maybe Uruguay, I have to check, but it's an exportable model. We can attach it to your university here and see what happens. Start off small and expand as it goes, but it's a totally worthwhile effort. Yes?
Can you talk about some of the co-ops that have not been very successful, and what were the challenges that they faced in not being successful?
Yes, absolutely. That's a really good question. So the first co-ops the first kind of class of co-ops that are not successful are co-ops that are all by themselves. We refer to them as one-offs. It's a great idea. Usually you have a charismatic entrepreneur and people get excited, but they're all by themselves. And so, you know, what do they do when they need help? What do they do when they need more training? What do they do when they expand? They don't have an ecosystem around it. So remember, one of my key points is what we did in Cincinnati. We didn't just start one co-op, we started 6. I think we started 8. 2 didn't work, but the other 6 stuck, and now we have an ecosystem. And the an ecosystem allows you to do 2 things. It allows you to exchange labor and allows you to exchange capital. You know, co-ops that are doing well to co-ops that are not doing well, people who need to be trained, retrained, and diversified. So in other words, it keeps the job market going, which is the primary goal, but it also allows those 2 things to happen. Now, just because you exchange capital and labor, that doesn't mean, to your point, that, you know, people get off with, you know, a cookie and no punishment. The pressure to make things right and to quickly repay the grace that you've been given is intense, because people want the same opportunity to happen again. So I would say that cooperatives that did not start in ecosystems, that started by themselves, usually face a more uphill battle. Cooperatives that are capital intensive are harder to do in the beginning than cooperatives that are not capital intensive. So a manufacturing co-op in the beginning might be hard as a first cooperative, whereas a bakery cooperative or a procurement cooperative might be easier because the capital entry is difficult. Cooperatives that go to low margin businesses like commercial laundries, some other businesses like that where the margins aren't big, always have a problem because they picked they picked the wrong industry. You want to pick industries that have good margins so that people can grow and you can afford your mistakes. I'll give you an example of a Mondragon co-op that failed. Remember that story I told about the little kitchen kerosene stoves, the first co-op that grew to be a $2.2 billion. It grew to be the largest co-op in Spain. It was called Fagor, that produced electrodomestic white goods, kitchens, baths. They were very successful. And that's a mature industry. You have companies producing kitchens and stoves all over the world, including in companies with lower cost points than Spain, which is in the top 11 of the world's economies. They had an advantage because they were Spanish, and so 27% of their sales came from the Spanish marketplace, including their higher profit margins. But because they had to compete on cost in countries where they had to go, but where the labor was less expensive. When 2008 came, construction was 10% of the Spanish GNP. When construction stopped, and it stopped with an immediate thud, nobody needed kitchens and baths. And so that economy that produced 28% of their sales and their high margins, that disappeared, and they were forced to compete on low cost markets where there were no margins, and they went out of business. They had to get subsidized by Mondragon for the tune of 350 million euros over 3 or 4 years, and finally everybody voting together said we can no longer do this because we're eating the seed corn of our new co-ops that are coming, because we have over 105 co-ops and we're starting new ones all the time. So they voted to shut down the subsidy, and that co-op failed. And this had never happened before in Mondragon, and they were like a deer caught in the headlights. So the commercial story is it failed for that reason, but there's another good story behind it, because what happened, there were 2,000 people that were worker owners that were put on the street. This never happened before. That's when the ecosystem values kicked in. In the Mondragon ecosystem, 85% of your salary and benefits are covered automatically while you're in between jobs, if your business fails, so that you can be retrained, because people put job creation even ahead of profits. And it forces them to go after good jobs so they are profitable. So first of all, everyone was on 85% salary and benefits. So no one was in the streets, and no one was going without, and no one was dumped like's happened so many times in the US. The second thing is that everybody in the 71,000 ecosystem voted voluntarily to take a 1.5% salary decrease and create a 50 million euro fund to buttress up what the mutual is already providing to make sure those people could stay at 85% benefits while they figured this whole thing out. Within 6 months, 1,600 of them had been retrained and placed on temporary contracts, not permanent, but trained and replaced in other industries, so they were re-employed. 200 took early retirement, and I think there was 50 left that they had trouble finding a job with. So when you have an ecosystem in place, you can do these kinds of things. Sir?
The cooperative concept you introduced to Mr. Lambert, that was pointed at the millennials, you might say.
I'm sorry?
That was his question. His question was
catered towards the youth, yeah.
The millennials, right? And you pointing him to a cooperative that was thriving, that was dealing with that.
Right.
That's the reference you made, right?
Right.
Does it address home ownership? Because in Bermuda context, when people go through university and then they start out in work life, home ownership and the high cost in Bermuda is prohibitive. Right. Does it address home ownership with that concept for those same people?
Right. So thank you for making that point, because I've come to realize how important home ownership here is in Bermuda. I mean, it's every taxi cab driver I've been in has driven me by his or her house and talked to me about it. So the answer is yes, it does. When you have an ecosystem that says sustainable housing is part of the ecosystem, then you have housing cooperatives that develop to build those houses and find worker owners that want to live there and take the mortgages out. You have a bank that provides the mortgages. You have everything you need to encourage housing. So it's part of the cycle. Some of the big problems we have in the United States is that you know, we need, our cities are being de-peopled of people that do the actual work because they can't afford to live there. In San Francisco, which is where which is the northernmost point of Silicon Valley, you have 50% of the population literally homeless living in the streets. So housing is all important. And to me, in Bermuda, and this is just my projection, I think that developing cooperative industries that deal with the home, how to improve the value of the home, like an energy efficiency cooperative that we built in Cincinnati called Sustainer-G, which lowers the carbon footprint, ups the value of that home, or a cooperative that puts solar on that roof and lowers the cost of energy. All those different kinds of cooperatives that exist out there in the marketplace, those would have a good market here because the home is such an integral economic importance to the everyday Bermudian. So I would say the answer is a resounding yes. Yes, you have a question?
You know, back in when we had the what are those races, the yachts, the boats up there.
America's Cup.
When we had the America's Cup, and then when it was finished, there were questions: what do we now do with this land that we created off that piece of the pinnacle? And I had put forward the idea of us building silver plates, you know, and instead of bringing them in, because we would have to get them all the way from China or Germany in order to get some good quality ones.
Yes.
That idea was quashed. I had spoken to somebody even about Glenn's idea of getting, bringing in electric cars because of the gas, because of the fossil fuel. It was creating a problem around the world, and we needed to look at it from that perspective as well. And again, that was quashed. And then I spoke, like he's speaking about housing. Now in Bermuda, we have a structure where certain parts of this society are allowed, or have been allowed since 1609, to be the economic successes. And those people in Bermuda, they focus on just about, let's get a house. And that's been going on for years, for hundreds of years, about 400 years. So the idea of us trying to, and people used to, my father's generation and going back, they used to work together to help each other to build their houses. You know, this was a normal part of our society. But now we're so tied into everybody's taking care of self. And it's a hard thing to break right now because people are so, look, nah, I got mine, he ain't got his, too bad. And that is going to be the greatest problem. Glenn's problem should succeed. You should be able to change people's minds. Say, listen, we're trying to save the planet. You know, we've got to create a situation where our children and our grandchildren, I keep saying the same thing over and over again.
I'm sorry, John. Took a question. I'm just conscious of time. It's other questions, so we're going to move on. Question. Every time. Question.
My point is, my simple point is, we have to start looking forward to what we have to do to save the planet and to have somewhere to live. So Glenn's idea of bringing in electric cars is a success. It should be a success. And sooner or later, we have to start educating the whole island. Listen, we can't keep using fossil fuels. Plus, they're running out of it. And Venezuela, some months ago, when they had the problem with the United States, said, Trump says, you all ain't sending no fossil fuel nowhere. Now, imagine if he had gotten to the point where he said, no fossil fuel going to Bermuda. We would have had all these cars sitting around here, nothing to put in.
Sorry,
So his idea is a success, should be a success. He can't fail, but we have got to, like I said, just educate our people about that, you know, the tide is turned.
Right. Well, I agree with you, and I also think that all of us have ideas, and all of us have experience getting those ideas rejected, and those are learning experiences. But it's how we pick ourselves up, and we try again. You know, the myth of Sisyphus. Remember? So the myth of Sisyphus is condemned by the gods to push the rock up the hill.
Right.
Gets to the top, the rock falls down, he's condemned to go back down and pick it up.
Get it.
So in 1988, when I was doing serious politics, I was at a table with Jesse Jackson and the Reverend Jesse Jackson. And I was complaining about the myth of Sisyphus. And I was just, spouting off, young, stupid guy, didn't understand much, but surrounded by some pretty cool people. And I said, I feel like I'm condemned to be Sisyphus, but I think that is ridiculous, and I would like to get out of this kind of constraint. And Jesse leans over to me and says, you need to be grateful you have a rock. All right, next question. Yeah, please, go ahead.
Because I'm guessing everyone's going to want to see this. But so just like you was mentioning before, I am trying to bring together like a film company then. But my model is not to have sole ownership, because that would be a bit too much on my end, and I want to have creative freedom. One of my problems has been not only just to find other young entrepreneurs like myself to be able to hop on to a co-op or a business model that's similar, but also it's more to find people that I do have. Well, the people that I do have, how could I say distribute the work to say have the co-op come faster? I say.
Right. So you are in a gifted generation. You were born knowing more about social media than I will ever learn. I realize that. So you told me when we first met that there's one or two really cool social media platforms that everybody listens to. So I would start there, finding like-minded people. And then you need to figure out in your own head, how many people do you need to start your business? Is it 2? Is it 3? Maybe 2 or 3 is enough to get it started, and that way you can attract like-minded people. You can put in a cooperative spirit. You can have a distribution of tasks so that everybody does what each person's talents leads him or her to do, and you can organize it that way. But I would naturally go out to the community that you're talking to anyway, and that's how you'll find, I think, the quickest response to your question. And just to get back to you, because the next time I'm here, I would love for you to come and talk about how you've turned your business plan into a successful business with the help of a stakeholder community. So I'm available through BEDC, and I have a network, and if one of us will know the right answer to anything. So please, how we can support you do that and you become a success. With one success, we will attract everybody else. So we'd love to have you be the first one, and we'd love to have you work with William and the team to see what we can do. So let's do that.
It started over a year ago, I think, in America's Cup, but it happened by chance. I just happened to bring in 2 electric vehicles for 2 individuals, and of course, that's where it started. I got a relationship with the overseas vendor. I did the research on exactly how it could work in Bermuda. Matter of fact, it'll work in Bermuda probably better than anything else. We're small, we're slowly growing with our charging stations around Bermuda, but solar electric, I think, is gonna tip the scale. People would love to drive past the gas station every day.
So let's make it happen.
Yes.
All right. So I'll give you my card.
Certainly.
Let's make it happen. Sir.
Yeah. Is there such a thing as a philanthropic co-op?
Yes. There are foundations that are cooperatively structured. There are foundations. For example, I can give you an example. We're working very closely with the Soros Foundation. It's called Open Society Foundation. It's a quite famous foundation. They have now set up a division called Shared, and they are adopting themselves to what they're trying to fund. So that's happening. A lot of foundations are vertical. You got to kiss the ring, and for those of us that aren't good ring kissers, it's hard, right? And sometimes cooperatives, sometimes those philanthropic organizations are tougher to take than the marketplace, because when they say no, it feels like, you know, you just lost your aunt, right? So, but people are changing because the kinds of people, where they're going, where the developing world needs them, people naturally want cooperatives. People naturally want the whole Grameen micro-enterprise movement is a cooperative waiting to happen. The freelancers movement, one of my friends, Sarah Horowitz, who created the Freelancers Union, which has 350,000 members, she told me that the unexpected consequence of her work was that all of her members are starting cooperatives. So, you know, you talk to millennials and Generation Z, they want to do renewable energy, and they want to be in cooperatives. That's what they want. Wiley.
Yeah, and to this gentleman's point that he made earlier, you know, in the world I came from West Texas, there was co-ops in virtually every aspect of our lives, including, you know, in an agricultural based community. And I think that to define a co-op as something that would be considered socialist, I think from a definition standpoint, if we let them define it as a socialist, then it could be. But whenever it's it's viewed from the world of what impact that it has, you know, that's really where the conversation should go. So, Michael, is there whenever somebody was asked about a co-op and what does a co-op do, is there a way to develop just, you know, like a 2 or 3 sentence talking points that we could all repeat consistently so that we make sure that the definition of the work that you guys are working so hard to implement could be consistent, and so that there was a good message that could be spread through Bermuda?
There's 7 co-op principles. Everybody, they're on your print here. There's 7 co-op principles. Mondragon has 10 principles. Co-ops basically have a business model like any other business, but they have a different ownership and management structure. So you put together Business 101, you know, in terms of price, quality, efficiency, service, all the basic things they teach you in school, but you add on the cooperative ownership structure and the cooperative management structure, which again, there are templates for how to do this, and it's not that difficult. It requires the unanimity of the stakeholders involved, and it requires an accountant and a lawyer to file, and it requires policy in the government that allows these kind of cooperatives to flourish, and you can put it together. And there's people that can help you do it all over the place.
Thank you for that. I just want to share, thank you so much, Michael. Jacqueline, you know, certainly your comments noted, you know, word for word, you know, here, you know, comment, you know, certainly it's great that you've met Michael and love his work, love the message, love the opportunity to serve and help. You know, certainly, I'm sure you have constraints. And you're right there, got an idea, want to be able to kind of move forward. Marianne, is it? Yes. You've come up to all, I believe, our workshops and seminars. I've seen you, you know, certainly we talked before. You have a history of co-ops and, you know, where you're from and whatnot. So maybe there's a space, maybe you have some time to be able to talk, you know, to be able to talk in a deeper way. Maybe there's some part you can play, whether it's just a meeting once a month. We'd love to be able to kind of bring you into our next space. Sherry, you've got a voice to the island, and I know the message resonates with you, but you have a co-op in you, I'm not so sure. But the point is, if you are desiring to set up a business, Kaz, maybe not right now, but down the road, kind of what I heard, or if you are an advocate, an influencer, if you want to play some part, we want to be able to kind of bring you together in a closer, you know, scenario to have some deeper conversations. Michael just kind of glanced over like the sports club initiative, but that's a whole piece of work in itself. And we're going to need a team of people that have some skills and knowledge and ideas and time to help us to be able to kind of pull apart the veil and to focus on one club and make an example of the power of the co-op. And we have some ideas with that. So all sorts of you know, concessions and incentives for early adopters, you know, certainly Ed and others that want to be able to start their own co-ops now. So when we send that email out, that invite, that's what it's about. It's inviting you to deeper conversations, to be a part of a regular kind of sustaining energy to kind of move forward.
And there's not a template, there's not a business out there that hasn't had a co-op attached to it somewhere. We can find the template, we'll get it, we'll share it with you, and you can accelerate what you do. That's the quickest way.
Cool. Anything else? Glenn, I'm not sure if your business was co-op or just kind of regular CEO.
Well,
But
I'm just the
fly
CEO
either way.
right now. If I can find a way, of course, it will grow, but I have to take small steps
No,
in order for it to get where I'd like it to go.
Absolutely. And we're happy to help with our product, microloan guarantee, happy to help in any way, so, please feel free.
Not a problem. I think I've sat down. Oh, he's gone. And went over quite a number of things with one of your colleagues who were here.
Yes, Randy, certainly, absolutely. Michael,
All right.
just want to
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan and Michelle, for coming. Yeah, fantastic. Thank you so much. So what do we have, just quickly before we go, we've spoken to the Premier once, twice. We actually, BEDC reports up through the Premier, so he's our minister and whatnot, so we're fortunate for that. He's always in our space. He's met you, he's met Julie, and certainly spent some time with Jessica Gordon-Nemhard. We had a great conversation today with a potential donor, funder, trying to expand the pipeline of resources for you. We mentioned that. We've got a few seminars and workshops planned over the month, right into the fall. But our biggest work is being able to look at the ecosystem and really kind of, Michael kind of focused on that, healthcare, solar, sports clubs, finance as well, to be able to kind of move some very strategic initiatives along that are really going to kind of create that wave and that momentum to be able to wash it with Bermuda. Not easy, takes time and focus and whatnot, but thanks to you, Michael, and certainly all the individuals that you've turned us on to, and everyone else. We've got a big vision, and we'd like to be able to embrace you and share all the wonderful things that can benefit you, your businesses, your friends, your family, in a very interesting way. So we're always open. We'll be calling you. Yeah.
And if we don't have the answer, we'll find the answer to your question. So I promise.
Yeah. Co-ops all over the world. It's not in Bermuda. Just one co-op, the credit union, but that's about to change. Yes, Ms. Rivera.
Would you, and I don't, maybe you're in a good position to do it. There are people who wanted to come tonight. This duplication of meetings, like I'm supposed to be at another one, and there are people who would have been here tonight. You would have had to pack through, but there's always something else going on. 30 years, 40 years ago, we talked about doing synchronized at one place, and we were going to use this at that time. I was a member of the, I don't know, it doesn't matter. Anyway, we were going to use the chamber. And we were going to make sure that every time someone planned something like a meeting like this, that there was some cross-reference, so you didn't have everything, happening at the same time. And that, I don't know who is doing it now. I've been
That's a
out of the
business.
loop.
Well, let me turn it back to
Out
you.
of the loop. This
So
would
who
be
is
so great.
So who is the Walmart of the master calendar in Bermuda?
I don't know. But I would
Is it what's to do in Bermuda? Is it some
Jerry,
other space?
Jerry.
Where can you go that says, I gotta go here because that, I see Bermuda, I see the
The
master
World
calendar.
Gazette doesn't do it,
Does
even
it-
though they have a
Does it
calendar.
exist?
But we need to
That's a
have
business.
that.
Well, there you go, it's your
Jerry.
business,
I
yeah.
don't have time.
Yeah,
But
you
I
don't have
would just-
time.
I'm just saying that
Sherry.
we need to
No,
do
no,
that.
absolutely, it is.
Because
It's fantastic.
you've got
It's an
people that
online-
you're losing
it's a-
because they
it's
don't
a-
get an opportunity to come. So
It's a hot
somehow
millennial business, it's all online, you can do it from
somebody
the corner of
needs
the
to
That's right.
computer.
put it all together.
Thank you so much for sharing that.
That's the only
That's right.
reason.
But also, the quality of the people in the room, this room, are so high that, it's so much more important than quantity. I would have come
Oh,
here
no, it's
for
not
just
that.
one of you,
Yeah.
and here I got all of you. So I'm very grateful for
But
that.
there's some really
so thank
people
you.
who would have been interested, and it just
We'll get to that.
distresses me that
We'll come
it's
back.
happening.
People
Yes.
say, come to Bermuda. I was like,
We
no.
invited Michael to the island specifically for some very focused individual one-on-one meetings,
Right.
and it was just remiss of us if we didn't kind of put him before you at the same time. That's why it was short notice, yeah? So we said, look, instead, we gotta be able to kind of turn him out. And we only invited you because you're on our list from the previous workshops and seminars.
Yes.
And our database. So we didn't go public, there was no radio ads, there was no World Gazette or anything like that. But Michael, thank you so much. Yes, Denise? Yes. Yes, all our, absolutely, mention that, thank you for saying that again. Our all the video, all the photos, all the PowerPoint is on our website always. Yeah.
That's right. You
Thank
can
you,
put me,
Ms. Rivera.
you can put me on your personal podcast and I'm the last person
I
to say
know.
it.
But I
Thank you all.